They listening, DA.
Yeah.
Everything
Hey.
we saying, DA.
What's good, everybody? What's up, everybody? We'd like to welcome you to the Q&A party. Be good and be good to one another. Get comfortable, sit down and enjoy the show with your lover. Feeling good, doing well, that's the vibe that we bring. From your mic to your mind, from Cali to Maine. Q&A, Q&A, Q&A. Relax and press play.
Welcome to the historic first episode of Q&A. You are here at the beginning of this timeline. You know, by nature, I'm a curious guy, and there's a lot of what and when that happens in sports talk, but I love the why. I love unpacking the why, and that's what this long-form conversation series is all about. It doesn't just have to be about sports. It's anybody or any topic that I find particularly interesting and important. Could be authors, could be musicians, could be writers. It could be really anybody that I want to ask important questions to and just kind of figure out and find out more about. Each one of these videos and conversations can be listened to just like a podcast, but also will be complemented by bonus member exclusive content called the raw feed. The raw feed in media parlance is when down the line at a live shoot, on a live show, at a press conference, something like that, the video and audio is fed to you, the engineers, what have you, as a, quote, raw feed, unpolished, unedited. That's what this is going to be. My unedited vibes, feelings, thoughts, analysis of what we just talked about with the guest. For that member exclusive content, it's going to cost the low price, as I do my crazy Eddie impersonation, of $4 a month. That is less than a Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich, the original, pickles only, no bacon, no fun stuff. So if you find this conversation and topic interesting enough, sign up for the raw feed and become a member for exclusive content, which will also include a monthly chat with just members here where you can ask me absolutely anything and you'll get discounts to all DA merchandise. Now that's a steal. Unedited, unpolished. My conversation today is with Dan Moore, a supremely talented writer who's also a native of the East Bay and grew up loving the Oakland A's. And he wrote an incredible piece for The Ringer. He's written for The Atlantic, for the San Francisco Standard, but this piece for The Ringer recently delved into this incredibly weird, bizarre, uncomfortable relationship between the city of Sacramento, which has nearly had its professional team stolen from them in the same way the A's were stolen from Oakland, and now trying to find a way to embrace the A's, knowing that it has a chance to land them perhaps attention, notoriety, or maybe even an expansion team. Let's talk to Dan Moore about his piece in The Ringer. Dan, how you doing?
Doing well, Damon. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So when you wrote this piece, it was after opening day when there was a lot of vigor and excitement in the crowd in Sacramento. First baseball game in the city. And then you also went back after another homestand and the interest was beginning to wane. So at the moment, where is interest and excitement levels like in Sacramento?
I think a lot of the people that I spoke to, there's a core of excited fans there who want this to work. But I think what you're seeing is evidence that perhaps Fisher and the people behind the A's overestimated how innately excited maybe Sacramentans would be about their particular baseball product. And maybe what you're seeing is that there are repercussions when you uproot a team that was an institution in the community that it came from, sever it from that community, and then plop it somewhere new without much recognition of that new place or without much respect for that new place. And I think everyone I talked to for the piece suggested that maybe the bad attendance is a product of things like John Fisher not putting Sacramento on the front of the jerseys and, also simultaneously putting Las Vegas all over the stadium and all over the jerseys. I I think you're seeing a reaction to that. And so the waning excitement is, I think, something that maybe John Fisher accidentally manufactured himself.
And this is supposed to be a 3-year process. So they've certainly burned a lot of goodwill at a very fast rate. But then again, this is what John Fisher does. As you noted in the piece, the Sacramento A's had priced their fans at the highest ticket in Major League Baseball, which on its surface seems complete insanity until you consider the owner here. And then quickly thereafter began slashing prices and offering 2 for $20 packages. So that in itself, right, it must have so many Sacramento season ticket holders just completely peeved off, considering the value of what they invested in the offseason was undercut by the team within a month.
Yeah, it's almost as if the people behind the organization have set out to upset as many people as possible, including those who were so excited about the team that they signed up for season tickets. One person I spoke to, a sort of sports luminary up there in Sacramento, Carmichael Dave, said that it seems like John Fisher is on a mission to execute the worst PR campaign humanly possible. And it sort of continues.
You cannot, if you're not in it, understand how bad John Fisher is at all of this. And it's hard to say whether it's purposeful or he's just this much of an ignoramus and he has surrounded himself by people that are bad at this or cannot say no to things. But it's like every step of the way, if you were running some type of PR or marketing campaign or class, you'd say, well, what would you do here? And Fisher and the A's do the opposite. And so here we reside, and your piece is about this kind of like paradoxical relationship that Sacramento right now has with the A's. On the one hand, they want to invest their hearts because they believe this might be able to lead them to an expansion team down the road. On the other hand, they're already getting a class in John Fisher says, screw you 101, where they're like, oh, wait, we have to believe in this guy and his product and his cause. So how much of a kind of a torturous in-between do Sacramento baseball fans kind of reside in right here?
Oh, they're in some ways an impossible situation. And I think, what they are dealing with right now, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head. What they are experiencing is pushing the boundaries of what is possible to manufacture in your own way of civic will and civic interest in a team. It's like, how one-sided can this possibly be? The way I see it, I would be mightily impressed if Sacramento summoned the enthusiasm and the energy to do something like sell out Sutter Health Park for the rest of the season, let alone 3 seasons. And it would be impressive from one perspective because it would be entirely self-generated, right? It would not be the product of the organization investing in the community or doing much of anything to excite or generate goodwill within the community. It would be Sacramento deciding, taking a look at its own soul and saying, okay, we're going to do this for the city, right? Like for us, and we're going to, decide on our own to try to put on a good audition. There are other ways to look at this, right? Like I know people in Oakland, some feel betrayed by Sacramento for the city's support or relative support of the team so far. I don't necessarily begrudge Sacramentans who want to go to an A's game and enjoy it and who want to go see Major League Baseball. I spoke with many people for the piece, fathers of young boys who have been, driving down to A's games for years and who, in fact, took part in the protests against John Fisher and against Rob Manfred and what was being done to Oakland, and who didn't necessarily want the A's to end up in Sacramento, but now have found them in their backyard. And so I bring that up because I don't think it's entirely productive to, pit fan bases against each other here. I do think, though, what you are seeing in Sacramento is an example of, they're on their own up there right now. Oakland fans know what they're up against and dealing with. And Sacramento, I think, and Sacramento fans are making the conscious decision, and will continue to make the conscious decision of, do we go to bat for ourselves here? Or, at some point, do we decide it isn't worth it?
Yeah, I was a guest on Sacramento Sports Talk a couple of weeks ago after one of my screeds on YouTube about just what a deplorable, ridiculous absurdity this whole relocation and now the opening of the Sacramento chapter has been. And I think they thought I was wagging my finger at Sacramento. And I had to clarify, I don't blame anybody for going to games in Sacramento. I have one of my closest friends ended up buying a season ticket package because he's a huge baseball fan. It's in their backyard. And he's like, wait a second, I get to go down the street and get to go see Major League Baseball? Yeah, I'm going to do it. And the sight lines are great, and we're going to be up close and personal. And I was like, I don't blame anybody for buying a ticket. I don't blame anybody in Sacramento for trying to pull levers and strings to try to get the team in. To me, this is just about how Major League Baseball has foobarred this whole thing and allowed this completely uncomfortable middle ground where we're ripping it out of Oakland. We're full steam ahead to Las Vegas, but all of the things that we demand from an expansion city, we are not going to expect or demand from Las Vegas. We will allow you to just kind of like twist in the wind for 3 years with the hopes and prayers that we get a shovel in the ground. But I don't blame Sacramento at all. However, you brought up this kind of fascinating internal debate that I'm sure a lot of people in Sacramento are going through, and that is having nearly lost the Kings in the same way. In that here became a billionaire looking to swoop in and take the Kings and bring them to Seattle before, there was this fan revolt and this civic unrest, and they kind of forced the hand of the NBA to keep the team in Sacramento, get a new stadium built, and that's when Vivek ended up buying the Kings and keeping them. So it's got to be hard, as you dissected, for some, if not many in Sacramento, to know that they are victimizing Oakland in the same way they almost got victimized by Seattle.
Yeah, well, it's part of the offensiveness and the cost of what Fisher and Major League Baseball have done here, right? Like the repercussions of the insanely, I'm going to put on my fan hat for a second in addition to my reporter hat, the very stupid decision to leave Oakland and to leave Oakland like they did, and then to enter into this purgatory period, that didn't just have repercussions in Oakland. It's also putting Sacramento fans in this rock and a hard place situation where they, to your point, are now have to deal with this guilt and are simultaneously victims and villains, even though they didn't ask for that situation. And then beyond that, it's a stain, I think, on kind of the morality of the game. It's offensive to anybody in professional sports, fans and owners and stakeholders alike, who perceive pro sports teams as more than just mercenary for-profit vehicles, right? Who think that sports can be something more, that they can be civic objects, that sports teams can and should perhaps mean something more to a place and to a people than, the local Amazon factory or any other type of company, right? What we're seeing here is, in fact, a suggestion that no, sports aren't that more important, more meaningful thing. And so I just lump all that into reasons to be angry about this. Sacramentans have reason to be angry about this, in addition to Oakland, in addition to fans everywhere who maybe possess that more romantic conception of what sports are and can be.
Well, so the roots of A's fandom very well. And the type of loyalty and intensity, even if crowds were sparse, there is undoubtedly this really tight knot that A's fans have with the team. And that's My biggest gripe about all of this, standing where I stand, which is in New York and working on national platforms, is that we as a national media collectively look at empty seats of the Oakland Coliseum, and we look at how the Raiders left and how the Warriors left, and we just wave a wand and say, well, Oakland's unfit for sports, and they have to move, and everybody shrugs their collective shoulders. And I have been shown the type of intense bond that A's fans have, and that is completely not reflective of the real fan loyalty that exists and the numbers of fans that exist if you were to just have a legitimate human owner instead of a soul-sucking evil villain like John Fisher. But you wrote in this piece, the soul of the organization is gone. So explain what you mean by that now that the A's have uprooted out of Oakland, either temporarily or permanently.
Yeah, a few things. If you have been following Oakland sports for more than just 5 years, you would know that Oakland, in fact, has a rich and very impressive history as a sports town. Pan back 30 years to probably the last time that the A's had an owner who was willing to invest meaningfully in the team. That was the Haas ownership in the late 80s, early 90s. And the A's led the American League in attendance. They also led the American League in payroll at the time. Even fast forward 20 years after that, when Oakland sports is in a less great place, the Coliseum's kind of falling apart, but we still have the Raiders and the Warriors. The Warriors sold out every home game at Oracle Arena going back like their last 8 years in Oakland.
Well before the Splash Brothers, well before titles. The nation should know that when the Warriors were terrible, they still sold out that barn.
Yes, 100%. And the Raiders were selling out, and the A's attendance woes, especially at the end, was a product of, on one hand, protest. Fans wanted to protest Fisher and what he was doing to the organization with their wallets. And even before then, just kind of exhaustion after 20 some odd years of underinvestment in the team. And beyond that, Fisher only ever trying to move the team. So beyond not investing in free agents and letting every one of our homegrown stars go, the only thing he ever tried to do with the A's was move them out of Oakland until about 2019, when he decided that he wanted to try to extort Oakland for about $1 billion in public funds for what would have been a privately owned and privately valuable stadium. So all that is background, I think, for or rather evidence about what happened to the A's in this and the organization. What I mean by when like the soul of the organization is gone, sports teams and their relationship with the community they represent, they aren't, those relationships don't become meaningful and valuable by accident. That's, I think, one thing that you're learning in Sacramento is it just doesn't happen automatically, right? It takes investment from both sides. And over the 20 years of Fisher's ownership tenure in Oakland, he not only did not invest in the A's, but he systematically alienated fans. And in that process, I think the A's became a different, more hollowed out organization than they had been, in previous iterations of the team.
2 years ago, you wrote a piece as the relocation was beginning to happen for the Ringer as well. This was 2 summers ago, 2023. And you said that the relocation, quote, threatens the integrity of Major League Baseball as an industry, as it corrupts the ability of fans everywhere to unself-consciously invest themselves in their teams. This is another part why I am so passionate about this, is that, again, the national media shrugs its shoulders and says, well, nobody shows up to games and they're never any good and the stadium stinks, so yeah, they should move. And in reality, it's really dangerous to play this game from where we all sit, because even if we're not A's fans, even if we're not victims of this, if you stand by and watch this happen, it corrupts potentially every team. The moment an owner says, I kind of don't want to be here, There might not be a good reason to not be here, but I'm going to create it. So why do you believe this relocation threatens the integrity of the entire league and an industry?
I think that serious fandom of the sort that you witnessed in Oakland, right? But that you see in cities everywhere. The kind of fandom where the team becomes something that the city talks about, that strangers come together over, that families can care about, the kind of love for a team that a father can guiltlessly pass on to his children, or that a mom can guiltlessly pass on to their children, that you could build rituals and traditions on. That depends on faith, right? It depends on the ability of a fan to believe that the team is something that's so worth investing in, that it's not this exercise in profiteering for a billionaire, right? That it's not the equivalent experientially or morally of, so dedicating yourself to Coca-Cola or some other kind of for-profit business. You have to have faith that, no, this organization actually cares about representing our community the same way, right? It has to be symbiotic. And if you lose the ability to believe that, right, if that belief is outed as childish and silly as a marketing ploy, then sports everywhere become less fun. Fans everywhere are poorer for that. The experience of giving a damn about sports becomes compromised, right? And I think that someone might look at what John Fisher did in Oakland and think of it as an isolated example, but it's not. This is a playbook for extorting cities and for leaving places that can be followed anywhere. And the shame is that, or rather the real damage comes from if owners in other places do this and start doing that, then fans in those cities are going to experience the same thing, that this has been one-sided all along, that actually this isn't different than caring about some other kind of for-profit company. And I don't know, perhaps I possess something of an overly romantic conception of what sports are or can be, but having seen what sports have done in Oakland, having known what they've done for my own family and how they bring us together, I just think it's a damn shame that that rug was kind of pulled out from under us.
Well, I think that's a real common thread amongst all the A's fans that I've been in contact with over the last couple of years of being on this thing. And that is this kind of loss, forget romanticism, but just like being made to feel like they were the fans were the enemy all along, and what type of disenchantment that brings to something that you love. It's really one thing when a relocation happens and you go, well, something went awry with the city, something went awry with the stadium, and it's not palatable anymore. And that has happened at times over the course of franchises, tenures, places. But this was almost an actively waged war against the fans. And the fans resisted the war for very long. Look no further than a fan base that showed up to the Oakland Coliseum as it was falling apart at the tune of 50,000 people for playoff games. It was like, just give us a product, we will show up, even though we're going to hold our noses and you're telling us we're the enemy, we will still show up. The fact that they then not only moved, but moved without a plan, a totally haphazard plan, and Major League Baseball didn't penalize John Fisher for not having a plan. All of that, to me, became summarized in this like sullenness of defeat, not only of like the love of baseball, the love of what the A's represented, but that people could be targeted as the enemy, even though their instincts were noble. They just wanted to support the team. And yet all of the safeguards in place, because they love the team, were ripped away piece by piece. The ownership didn't care, the front office didn't care, the league didn't care, and everybody who could save the fans, and maybe in some cases the city itself or the cities, nobody was there to save them from this. And it was like, how did we turn into the enemy? And it became such a defeat. And I think, you expressed this in a great way in this piece.
Well, thank you. And one thing I'll add is that key to the relocation was Fischer and Manfred manufacturing a pretext for relocating the A's. So turning the A's fans into the enemy, as you say, that was that was a business plan. That was John Fischer needed and wanted to make his straits in Oakland seem so dire that no one would begrudge him for wanting to move, right? And so to do that, he had to drive fans away from the park. He had to denigrate Oakland's viability as a sports town. And he had to make the fans seem like they didn't want the team here. And so the pain that I think fans felt was there were layers to it, right? There was the pain of losing your team. There was the pain of being scapegoated. There was the pain of being gaslit. And then, there was the pain of having, for a long time, the whole sports world sort of agree with the people who were doing this to you.
Yeah.
It was only when, honestly, the truly kind of heroic efforts of, the guys like Glass Dive Bar, as you're rocking right now, and the Oakland 68s, and the way the whole city came together to refute that narrative in that project. People could say like, oh, fans failed, the city failed to keep this last team. One thing I'll say is Oakland, at the end of the day, made available to Fischer more than double the amount of public funding he's getting in Las Vegas. They made available some of the most valuable land in the world on the East Bay Oakland waterfront there. The city did their damn part. Fans did their part. At the end of the day, this comes down to an industry and a league that's empowered to operate like a cartel without regulations or without the incentives of a free market that just flexed its muscle on a fan base that it decided that it wanted to abandon. And Oakland and A's fans were just kind of caught in the crosshairs. But what they did achieve, in spite of those impossible odds, is they changed the story, right? Like, if fans had just sort of stepped back and let everything happen, if Oakland had just stepped back and let Fischer and Manfred say the things that they wanted to say and do those things, then the whole world would believe now that Oakland is just a dying sports town. But the truth is that Oakland is a great sports city, and I think it proved that, and it proved how badly it wanted the team, and it more than anything, I think it proved who was at fault for what happened, and it's Fischer and Major League Baseball.
And I hope so, and I hope that becomes more and more illuminated as the days go on and the story unfolds. I know for a lot of Oakland fans, it feels like the end of the story. The team is no longer in Oakland, and now it's like, okay, they floated away, except that the issue is you and I are talking here 1 month into the Sacramento thing, which is a 3-year chapter, 1 month into a 3-year odyssey, which then is only perhaps the start of them getting out of wherever they are and into Las Vegas. There has to be funding, there has to be financing, there has to be a new ballpark. And then even when you get into Las Vegas, I guarantee you, if they do get in there within 3 to 5 years, we're already talking about attendance woes in Las Vegas about the Oakland A's in the Las Vegas A's. I guarantee that becomes a narrative. So it's like this. The war isn't over because this cannot ever end because John Fischer's at the helm, and it's still such a fakakta plan and a ridiculous. It's not even a plan. It's really not a plan. And so it's really not over. We have to just keep talking about it and illuminating it and educating people about it.
Yep.
This piece in The Ringer by Dan Moore is excellent. Go to theringer.com, click on the MLB tab. It is one of the top 3 pieces over there. And also under his byline, you will see the piece from 2 years ago about this relocation that I think A's fans, it's a real interesting read, and just baseball fans and sports fans in general. It's worth their time as well. And Dan has written for a number of great sports institutions. And so He's got a lot of good work out there if you want to check it out. As I mentioned before, The Atlantic, the San Francisco Chronicle, Baseball Prospectus, and now The Ringer as well. Dan, awesome, man. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for writing that piece. I know a lot of A's fans appreciated it, and we'll see where this thing goes. And my guess is you and I will be in touch.
Thank you, Damon. Appreciate it.
You got it. Dan Moore joining us, everybody, here on the show. As expected, Dan was excellent. And if you enjoyed this conversation, remember, there is bonus exclusive content for members only called the Raw Feed. Sign up now, $4 a month. You'll get raw feeds for all conversations for Q&A. Plus, you'll get a live chat with me for members only once a month and discount on all DA merchandise. Now, hey, how can you get better than that? Thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate it very much. I'm DA, Damon Amendolara. We'll see you next time.